I'm Sara, and if you've ever wondered how you get this cool texture onto your projects, I've got a great foot to show you how you can create that on your own. Surface embellishment on fabric adds so much dimension and depth to projects. It's a lot of fun to play with. And the foot I'd like to share with you is the Chenille Foot. And that's what's going to give us these really neat textured strips on top of our fabric. Now you start out with narrow strips of bias cut fabric. You want it to be bias cut because that's what's going to chenille really nicely when we brush it. And what's special about the Chenille Foot is there's a large opening at the toe of the foot where you can place your chenille strips, and then they're going to go into that larger opening there and then underneath of the needle. So when you're working with this, you want skinny strips, about 5/8 of an inch, and you're going to place them into the foot before you attach the foot to the sewing machine. That definitely makes it a little bit easier. And I'm going to take all of my cut ends, got a little angle there, and then feed them right into that opening in the foot. And if you line up all those triangle points in the same direction, it helps a little bit, but it works either way. So your fabric feeds right into the foot, and I can see here is the needle opening. That's where my needle is going to stitch up and down, and it's going to grab all 3 layers of those chenille strips as it sews. You're going to work with just a standard straight stitch. Let me snap on my foot here. And before I introduce the fabric that I'm going to sew these strips onto, I like to just take a couple of stitches in place just through the 3 layers to anchor it all together. Now everything is together, my needle's buried inside of there, and everything's being held nice and straight, so I can bring in a piece of fabric. Now on the quilts up front there, I did straight lines, but you can also stitch your chenille on diagonally. That makes for kind of a neat effect as well. So I'm going to do that this time. So I'm going to slide my fabric right into the machine. There we go. Let that foot catch it. And then I like to just kind of hold it straight toward me as I stitch. You could certainly add a little marked line, but I'm going to just sew diagonally across these squares and stitch it on. So I'll stop and just kind of reposition all those fabrics again and continue on. There we go. Almost to the end. Now that I'm at the end of the seam, I'm just going to use my thread cutter, and you can pull those strips back through the foot or cut them off. So here I've added one of my diagonal strips of chenille, and you might be wondering, how do we go from this really flat, smooth fabric to this rough, textured fabric? And for that, you want to use a special brush. They make special chenille brushes that have really wiry bristles on the brush. You want those to be really sturdy and wiry. There are a couple of different kinds. And when you're working with these, you then want to just brush into that fabric. Get a little bit of an arm workout while you're doing this. But if you just kind of brush against each side, I've found that that works better than just going straight up and down across the strip. I like to just go against the fabric. And as you can see, it's already starting to get really rough and textury. And then after you've done that, you can always throw it in the washing machine, and that will help to add some of that additional texture as well. Now, you're not limited to straight lines when you're working with chenille. You can also do some fun curvy stitching. So I've got another little piece of fabric here, and I really do think it's easier to get the fabric in if you just take that foot off. These snap-on feet are so easy to get on and off anyhow. So I'm going to place my strip in there, get it underneath of the ankle. There we go. Now, I'm going to bring my fabric in. And you can make little flowers and rosettes because you don't have to work in straight lines when you're playing with the Chenille Foot. I'm just going to gently kind of curve around as I stitch, stop and pivot from time to time. I really like my pivot feature on my machine for that. And sometimes you'll find that your strip sort of folds over on itself as you're working with this curvy motion, and that's totally fine, because when you brush this and chenille it and all that texture comes out, you'll never even notice if your strip was still facing right side up or right side down. And of course you want to work with bias strips because those chenille the best, and if you're doing curvy stitching like this, it's a lot easier if you've got bias cut strips. So I've just about got my center filled there. And now I'm just going to kind of take my tail back out and make a little stem. And again, you can make that curvy or straight. There we go. You could add some petals to it, add another color of chenille, and you can make really fun textured embellishments for your fabrics. Now the next time you've got a project that's just begging for some extra texture, grab your chenille foot and be sure to put your best foot forward.